Shalom, my dear friends. Today, the second day of the month of Menachem Av. Yesterday, we celebrated Rosh Chodesh Av, and we now are in the so-called 9 days that precede or that run up to Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, that will be observed next Saturday night and Sunday night, October 2nd and 3rd, in memorial of the destruction of our holy temple. And our guide to Jewish life, the Shulchan Aruch, the laid table, the normative code of Torah law until today, states that Misha Nichnas Av Mama'atin B'Simcho. From the time that the month of Menachem Av enters, we minimize Simcha. We have to minimize, we have to reduce our Simcha, our joy, which is a very interesting concept, as we shall discuss presently, and has been the source of very much darkness, gloom, and misery among Jewish people in all the generations. I remember as a child having very little understanding of what the Holy Temple was all about, finding that in our Jewish school and in the synagogue, the 3 weeks in the middle of the summer when people were enjoying going to the beach and swimming in the sun, all of the observant Jewish people had to maintain a low profile and conduct ourselves with misery and depression, it seemed. I'm reminded of the story of a rabbi whose wife was about to give birth, but the doctors said that her situation was so critical that she was going to have to choose between her life and the life of the child. And with great pain, she decided that she must forego her own life for the sake of the child. And indeed, she died in childbirth. And when the boy became bar mitzvah, his father said to him, "Now, I want you to go to lead the prayers in the synagogue tonight. And don't forget that when you come to the Kaddish, the sanctification of God's name, which is offered by those who are in mourning, I want you to put every effort into your saying of the Kaddish in order to elevate the soul of your mother." And the boy prayed the prayers of the evening service in a rather desultory way, and afterwards the father said to him, How could you possibly have so neglected the proper intention you should have shown in your recital of the Kaddish for your late mother who sacrificed her life for you? And the boy said, "Well, you saw her, you knew her, she was your beloved wife. I never even saw her. She died at the time of my birth. How could I possibly know how precious she was that I need to mourn over her?" And the same is true of our holy temple. We never saw it. We don't know what it was. We don't know what it is, its importance for the world. And here we are today sitting in a world that is literally running amok. Since the last time we met last week, a new war has joined the existing array of wars across the earth between Cambodia and Thailand. And without any question, there is an enormous escalation of active hatred against the state of Israel, the people of Israel, and the Jewish people. And here we are wondering, what are we supposed to do? Our code of Torah law, the Shulchan Aruch, tells us that in the 9 days, the custom among the Ashkenazim is to refrain from eating meat or drinking wine. Because how could we eat meat and drink wine when our holy temple, where the meat was offered on the altar for sacrifices, the holy temple is not here? How can we drink wine and celebrate when there are no wine libations on the altar? The Ashkenazim refrain from washing in warm water for the 9 days running up to Tisha B'Av, although the Bnei Edot HaMizrach, the Sfaradim, are somewhat more lenient with respect to washing. However, the general atmosphere is one of solemnity, of mourning, of trying to show sobriety regarding the loss of a temple that we know so very little about. And I'd like to look at the whole concept of mama'atim b'simcha, which is translated as reducing or minimizing our simcha. I'd like to look at this in a radically new way, fortified by the teachings of Chassidut. And indeed, in our generation, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, following in the tradition of Chassidus, saw that the mourning practices of these 9 days are very much liable to simply pull people into a state of depression, which is completely non-constructive. And there are in the halacha a number of ways out. One of them is that when a person or a group of students complete the study of a Talmudic tractate, a Masechta, this is an occasion for very great joy at any time of the year, and it is customary and indeed a law in Shulchan Aruch that when one does complete the study of a tractate, a Masechta, we should make a feast for Siyum Masechta. At the conclusion of the study of the tractate, we mark the occasion with a festive meal, including meat and wine. And although meat and wine are not to be eaten during the 9 days, the joy of a siyum masechta, of a completion of a tractate, is so great that this overrides the sadness of the 9 days. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe was very emphatic that people should aim to attain a completion of a tractate during the 9 days, so that they could break the sadness and the sorrow with a proper feast of wine and meat over a matter for very great joy, the completion of an entire tractate. And this is very much in line with the approach of the Baal Shem Tov and his students and followers in the Hasidic movement, that in our time, all of these ascetic practices of fasting and refraining from washing and other such practices are, because liable to pull people into depression, they should be treated with great care and not necessarily observed where we can find a legal way around them, as in the case of the completion of a tractate. But there is, in the whole concept of mama'atim b'simcha, of attaining a level of ma'at, a little simcha, there isn't something very, very deep that is also rooted in the Hasidic pathway and indeed in the teachings of Reb Nachman, which are the foundation of the Azamra Institute and the whole approach that goes with it, the approach of seeking joy through searching out for the good points in any situation, the good points in ourselves, the good points in others, and the good points in all of the situations we face day after day. And particularly now, as Jewish people across the world are waking up to a horrifying new reality of almost universal global hatred against Jews, which is not merely something theoretical, but finds expression in terms of attacks on Jewish businesses, on restaurants, on synagogues, on children's schools, and so on. So the situation is one of very great danger, and we really need seriously to think how we are going to react to all of this. In the last sessions, I have painted a very negative picture of what is happening in Israel with what I are presented as a literal war against those who are observing the Torah in Israel. And as I discussed last week, this is absolutely nothing new, because within the Jewish people there have been streams of antagonism to those who observe the Torah in the traditional way. Within the last 200 to 300 years, enormous hostility among many Jewish people to Torah observers, which has culminated in the situation we face today, where the great majority of people who would be qualified to be called Jewish are actually, in most cases, very far from actual observance of the Torah, as this is understood in the circles of Orthodox Jews. And for the Jewish person that seeks to observe the Torah in the best possible way, to seriously serve the Creator of the world through the observance of the specifics of the Torah, not merely to say, I believe in God, yes, I want to serve God, so I'm a nice person, I smile at people, I give a helping hand. We need more than this. We need a Torah that goes into every fiber of our being, every limb of our bodies, every thought, every word, every deed, all through the day is all to be elevated, connected to the Torah and to the service of God. An enormously challenging prescription for life. And when we see that the majority of the people are so far from the Torah, which is an appalling situation in the light of the teachings of the prophets about the consequences of this deviation from the Torah. Those who seek to observe the Torah, who are sighing over the situation, who are mourning over the situation, we need to sit down with great sobriety to ask, what should our direction be now? I discussed at the conclusion of our previous session the teaching in the prophet Isaiah, chapter 26, verse 20, where the prophet says, in a teaching that is said to be offered for the days of the war of Gog and Magog, which we all know is this protracted war that we're going through now. There the prophet says, go, my people, come into your chambers and shut the door behind you. Wait for a little while until the wrath will pass. Isaiah chapter 26 verse 20. And as I discussed last time, our commentators state that the meaning of the concept of going into the chambers is the concept of entering the chambers of your heart, the chambers of prayer, the prayer from the heart, the chambers of knowledge and understanding in the heart, namely the study hall, entering into the house of prayer and the house of the study of Torah. This is the advice that is given to the people of Israel for the time of the war of Gog and Magog. Maintain a low profile. Go into your private rooms. Don't try to change the entire world. It's quite clear today that the major governments of the world are intent on war. This is completely opposite to Melech Moshiach, King Messiah, who comes to bring the nations to break their swords into plowshares, to take all of the riches that go into arms and armaments and devote them to feeding the poor, feeding the hungry, feeding the needy. And this is the very opposite of what we are seeing today. I read a statistic the other day that in the last 10 years, the amount of wealth that have been sucked into the hands of the global elite is obscene, that the trillions have been sucked out of the economy and are sitting in the assets of the super wealthy elite and are not available for the many needs in the world. And meanwhile, the world is facing wars and wars and wars, as we've discussed. I don't want to keep on harping on about the negativity surrounds us. On the contrary, my whole purpose today is to discuss this fundamental concept that is applicable so much to us today of searching for the good. Right now, our faith is founded upon the declaration of the Shema. Hear, Israel, Hashem, our God, Hashem is one. The entire venture has one single purpose. It's all one system ruled over by the creator of the world. And when we say this, we put our hands over our eyes. We put our fingers to shut out the vision from the eyes so that we don't see this world that stands immediately in front of us. We are demonstrating that we have the power through willpower alone to exit the immediate apparent reality that seems to be surrounding us, that is reflected by the media that never cease to tell lies, never cease to pour out vaporous garbage hour after hour, minute after minute. We have the power to separate ourselves from this. We are not slaves to this. We can shut our eyes and shut out this crazy world and connect with a far higher source who has created the present situation as a means to a later situation. And we, the people of Israel, the chosen people, whose prophets have taught us what is the ultimate situation to which we aspire, we must remove ourselves from this present reality in the privacy of our homes, in our corner of prayer and meditation, and we must assert the dominance of the Spirit. This is done through intense prayer and the intense and serious study of the Torah. We have in our Siddur, and I hope we can discuss this in great detail at some time, we have in the prayers in our morning service particularly, and in the afternoon and evening services, an entire journey through our purpose in this world, from the beginning of the creation to the ultimate redemption and revelation of God to all. This journey, which starts off with the morning blessings and takes us through the sacrificial portions and the psalms and the blessings of the Shema and the peak of the prayer, the Amidah prayer, the standing prayer, when we will day by day use this as our grounding point, this period of prayer in seclusion, where we are alone with our thoughts and projecting our thoughts to the source of creation, we are thereby asserting the power of the Spirit over the miserable reality that surrounds us. The same is with all of the practices of Torah. On the Shabbat, from before sunset on Friday until after the stars come out on Saturday night, we are again withdrawing ourselves from this crazy world of racing after wealth, where people worship the work of their hands. And we are taking this entire day to seclude ourselves with God, with our families, with our friends, with our fellowships. We are detaching from this miserable, immediate, apparent reality and plugging in, tuning into the higher reality. And all of this is the concept of Reb Nachman's teaching of finding the good points. We will find them when we search for them. We have now to enter a stage in our spiritual development where we, despite the surrounding gloom in the world, despite the wars, despite the conflicts, despite the severe conflicts within the Jewish people, where those who seek to observe the Torah sincerely to serve God Almighty, we will go on the path of Torah without looking not to the right nor to the left. If we have been blessed with the knowledge that this indeed is the pathway to redemption, let us go forward with this pathway, without trying to rope in the rest of the world, without trying to stop the anti-Semitism, to bring the world to its senses, it's very unlikely that any individual among us has the power to accomplish all that. What we do have the power to do is to make little movements at the grassroots. I always go back to the image of the busy bees, who are now one of the most persecuted species in the world. These industrious creatures who actually fly from flower to flower and pollinate the flowers and are a crucial link in the food chain in actually enabling our fruits to grow. The bee is truly an example of the service of God. Not for nothing is the name of the bee Devorah, the name of one of the most industrious and greatest of our prophets, the prophetess Devorah, her name Devorah being the name of the busy bumblebee, going from flower to flower without asking what's happening in the wider world, are the wars coming to an end, are the people coming to know God. The busy bee just goes from flower to flower. That what the bee wants is the sugar. The bee wants the nectar, obviously, but unknown to the bee, or possibly they do know, they are carrying as they rub against one flower and bring what they rubbed to the next flower. They're actually enabling the whole food cycle to continue, and all with such innocence. And we need to come to our senses and to understand what tiny little cogs we are in the entire system. Tiny little cogs, but so precious and so important. God has given us this role in the creation. It appears that those who run the state of Israel, who do not wholeheartedly embrace and follow the Torah, believe that Israel's success in the world is through military research, through military weaponry development, through ever more sophisticated means of getting inside your enemy, through beepers and through all kinds of electronic tricks that are now being used with drones and so on, more and more things coming into use. But what Israel unfortunately ignores is that the Creator of the world is governing everything. The Creator of the world is sending these enemies against us because they are all in His hands. They are all simply rods with which He afflicts Israel as long as we continue with our stubbornness and we don't turn wholeheartedly to the fulfillment of the Torah. When Korach rebelled against Moses and implicitly against the entire revelation of the Torah to Moses, God said to Moses and Aaron, Hibadelu, separate yourselves from them. Separate yourselves from the assembly of Korach. And indeed, for the last 250 years, the concept of hitbadlut, separation, has governed many of those who continue to observe the Torah in face of the surrounding assimilation, in face of the surrounding secularism. There is a concept which is very much observed among the ultra-Orthodox communities of separation from the rest of the Jewish people who have strayed from the wholehearted fulfillment of the Torah. Now, we may find this objectionable. It's very hurtful to me if somebody who looks incredibly religious won't look at me in the face, won't talk to me directly, even though I am Jewish, just because in his eyes my standard of observance is deemed less than his. Well, who is to judge and who is to decide whose service of God is better than the service of anybody else? However, for us who seek to observe the Torah, we have to separate ourselves mentally and spiritually, if not actually in physical terms, but certainly in our minds, from the prevailing culture of secularism, of Satanism, of defiance of the Torah. We have to do this indeed if we are going to be of any assistance to anybody else who's still sunk in there. It's like a doctor who has to maintain the highest standards of hygiene if he's not to get dragged into all the illnesses from which his patients are suffering. And so too, the observers of the Torah are compelled to maintain a separation from those around. And this separation, this hitbadlut, willful and conscious separation from the mainstream of Israelites who have fallen into one or other level of distance from the Torah. The essence of it, as far as we're concerned, those who seek to observe the Torah, is to go with our heads only in the Torah. In other words, we need to reach a point where day and night we are completely consumed by our observance of Torah. That all the week we are looking forward to Shabbat, preparing for Shabbat, knowing that the Shabbat sends blessing to all of the days of the week. And when we are celebrating the Shabbat, we are conscious of this, how our celebration of the meals of the Shabbat, our singing of the Zemirot, the table songs of the Shabbat, our intensity in prayer, that all of this is strengthening our connection with God and will send holy influence into the days that follow the Shabbat. In this way, we are absorbed in the Shabbat both before and on and after the Shabbat. When it comes to our time for eating, we are absorbed in the laws of kashrut. We are careful with the products that we bring into our homes. We are careful about how we cook them. We are careful about our vegetables and fruits, how we inspect them to see that there are no undesirable creepy crawlers in the things that we consume. We are living our Torah, literally putting ourselves totally into the Torah. For many people, there's a separation between the time of prayer, the time of study in the synagogue, in yeshiva, as opposed to when you're out there in the jungle and trying to do business surrounded by a whole lot of crooks and cheats and impossible government regulations, with all the temptations to get around the laws of decency and justice. And here in that jungle of business, there again, we have to, when we're making purchases, when we're writing a contract, when we're trying to buy a house or sell a house, negotiate a business contract, any of these activities is all coming under the guidance and the teachings of the Torah. And when we are doing this, when we are following the path of Torah and nothing else, we don't look to the right or the left, we don't look to the anti-Semitic noise that is going on in the social media, in the newspapers, on the streets, in the demonstrations, we're actually doing the best thing we possibly can against our enemies. This is stated in the books of Musar, of moral correction, of reproof, that when a person has enemies, and that person, instead of fighting those enemies and taking vengeance on the enemies, the person devotes themselves to repairing themselves, to purifying and enhancing their soul, and become a shining example to the world of true righteousness and godliness. This is the greatest insult that they can give to their enemies. As today, when we look back at the Nazi persecutions and we look back at all the other persecutions against the Jewish people historically, and yet both in the land of Israel and outside the land, there are synagogues, there are study halls where tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of Torah observant children of Israel are pursuing the Torah and the mitzvahs, And this is our greatest defense against all of our enemies, precisely what God wants of us. I think we can see today that the assimilation of Jews has reached the end of the road. We had this in Germany before the Holocaust, where by the early 1930s, the state of assimilation of the Jews of Germany had reached a point where Jews were involved in every area of seedy, degenerate art and every kind of immorality, every kind of negativity, everything against the Torah. And it was at that point that the people of Germany got up and said, "We don't want you guys, get out of here. This is not what we want you for." Historically, the Jews had made an enormous contribution to the countries of Europe as merchants, as traders, as bankers, and facilitating trading and business. But all through the years until the 17 and 1800s, in most cases, the Jews maintained their separation from the nations of the world through their unusual appearance, their unusual clothes, their unusual practices, resting on the seventh day, not eating every food that comes to hand, and so on and so forth. When all of these boundaries began to be eroded by assimilated Jews, it was then that the nations of the world got up and said, "Get out of here, we don't want you, you're the worst people in the world." And I think what we are seeing today is precisely this, that the assimilation has got to a point where, under the heavily financed leadership of Qatar and their protégés, funding university professorships and courses and departments, all fomenting hatred and anti-Israel propaganda, we have to understand that the underlying cause, the ultimate cause of this antagonism is because we have strayed from our true role in the world. Our prayer service, our daily prayer service, over which observant Jew may spend at least 1 hour in the morning, at least half an hour in the afternoon, half an hour in the evening. The prayer service is itself the relic of the temple service in our time. If we only knew the importance of our prayer services in maintaining the harmony and the influences that come into the world, we would put much more effort into our concentration and into our prayers. The daily prayer service is a process of entering stage by stage into the successive courtyards of the temple until we come to the temple edifice itself and into the Holy of Holies, where we stand at the climax of our prayer facing the unified creator of the universe in our prayer, and our prayers are the temple in the heart, the temple in the privacy of our homes. And until there is enough Jewish people in the world who are ready to shift the balance and to swing the Jewish people towards a Torah nation, a Torah state, a Torah situation in the land of Israel, until this time, it is the efforts of each and every one of us in our own private sphere, with ourselves, with our dear ones, our spouses, our parents, our children, our friends, our fellows. It is here that we are creating the community of the future. We have to stop paying attention to all this wild craziness around just as far as we can. It often becomes almost impossible to do this. The persecuted people in Israel, the Torah observers, are hounded on every side. We have young boys that should be studying the Torah in yeshiva who are forcibly dragged into the death traps of Gaza. And many of us are facing these horrendous challenges. And with this, at this time, instead of being negative, what we have to do is to search for the divinity within our reach, within the lives we live. Because the whole point is that God is infinite. God's power is infinite. God rules over everything from the greatest of all the creations to the tiniest, constantly, every moment. And our task is to open ourselves to the presence of divinity, to know that God is one, God is everywhere. This is service, this is daily effort involved in reaching these levels of awareness and understanding. But when we are doing this, we are thereby bringing about the redemption, because every little mitzvah is infinite in its ramifications. This is the whole point and the whole crux of the teaching of the good point, that a person is in near despair. I've messed up, I failed, I did so much wrong, I have sinned, I cannot lift my head before God, I'm out of shame, out of my contrition will not allow me to rejoice in any way, and all I see is this darkness within me, all I see is this darkness around me. It's at that point that Reb Nachman says you must search for that little bit of good that remains in you, that little me'at tov, a little bit of good. Hebrew word for a little is ma'at. Good is tov. And Reb Nachman says that we need to search until we find something that we can be happy about. Because the thing that we can be happy about is the godliness that we have. Look, every one of us here today, all of us who are joining in these studies, we've all come from where we've come from, impelled by some higher force. Our lives have been drawn to where we are today by this higher force. Over that we should be rejoicing and dancing for joy to eternity, for the goodness of the one God, the great God, the source of all goodness, the source of all mercy and kindness, that He has actually lifted me up from the trash pit. He's lifted you up. This is something to be joyous about, and the joy is infinite because the one who has given us this is infinite. If we take a single mitzvah, a Jewish male wraps the tefillin in the morning, wears the talit, the prayer shawl. A woman lights her candles for Shabbos. The act is so tiny, and yet the infinite potential is endless, because this is the commandment of the one God, the infinite God, Ein Sof, who compressed and constricted himself into the commandments of the Torah, that we should be able to grasp him in some way. And thereby, when we grasp a mitzvah, we are grasping a limb of the King. We are grasping onto infinity. And this is the power of the pathway of finding the good point, that each good point that we are finding in ourselves, our connection with God, the very fact that we're even searching for God, the very fact that we discern in ourselves, but despite our laziness and our sporadic efforts, nevertheless, the very fact we have this desire to come close to God, this itself is something to be joyous about, that we have this point of truth within us. And it is over these points of goodness that Reb Nachman teaches us to rejoice. And this is the meaning that we can give to the concept in the Shulchan Aruch, the normative code of Torah law. From the time that the month of Av enters, Mishenichnas Av, Mema'atim b'simcha, we follow the path of Me'at. We follow the path of the little good point, the ma'at, as it says in Psalms in King David, Psalm 38, V'od ma'at ve'en rasha, in just a little there'll be no wicked person there. If you could find the good point, just a little bit that is still there, even in a person who seems to be wicked. If I think I'm wicked, because I can find some point of goodness, I've changed the whole situation. I look at where I was, an evil person, a wicked person with evil intentions and evil deeds. It's no longer there in the merit of the good point. I've redeemed myself. I can redeem another person through finding that person's goodness. Od me'at ve'en rasha. In just a little, you'll see that that person you thought was so wicked is not there. Hitbonanto al makomo ve'enenu. You will meditate and contemplate the place where you thought he was, and he's not there anymore, because through your discovering of the godly point, you've elevated that person. You can elevate yourself. A situation may seem negative, but when you apply your holy intellect to the situation and analyze where is the good that will come out of the situation, you have redeemed the situation. You have dispelled the bad by finding the good. And so it is with every thought, every word, every deed through the day. So the Hebrew word simcha has the numerical value of the letters 353. Now, a regular Jewish year, if it's not a leap year, has 354 days. So Reb Nachman says you must be besimcho, you must be in the state of joy always, 353 days of the year. There's perhaps one day when we cannot outwardly show our simcha yet, because the only joy of Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, will be when we will see Melech Mashiach revealed out of the ashes of the temple. But for the other 353 days of the year, even if things are dark and gloomy, Reb Nachman says it's a great mitzvah to be in simcha always. 353 days of the year as in the numerical value of the Hebrew word simcha. And this is the key to these 9 days. Mama'atim b'simcha. We go with the pathway of finding a little bit of good that will dispel an enormous amount of darkness. Mishenichnas Av mama'atim b'simcha. From the time that Av enters, we must seek out the simcha through the darkness, through the sorrow, through the gloom. We must seek it out and rejoice in each good point we can find, because the good is infinite. And with this, my dear friends, as we go forward in this month of Menachem Av, Av the Comforter, let us truly and seriously follow this pathway. It's a real path. It's not just a nice theory. This is a pathway that you follow in the workshop of your hitbodedut, in your prayers, when in your thoughts and your mind you're searching for that good point. And so on all of the time, searching always for the good and joining one good point to the other to make the melodies from which life is composed and which give life its beauty, its joy, its charm, its grace. So, my dear friends, on this second day of the month of Menachem Av, I bid you Shavua Tov U'Morach, a good and a blessed week. I bid you Chodesh Tov U'Morach, a good and a blessed month. As we progress towards Tisha B'Av next Saturday night and Sunday, August 2nd and 3rd, let us truly be connected at every moment to the godliness all around us. And with this, we will bring light into ourselves and redemption to all of Israel and to all the world. Shavua Tov and Chodesh Tov U'Mevorach.